I had drinks at a happy hour with the executive team from Dominion Voting uh, on Jekyll Island. And only years after, when I read that book, did I kind of realize how interesting that was, that I had that experience all the way across the board between, control and all of that kind of stuff or whatever. She's incentivized to cheat that way, to make bad decisions, right? When you're on a Bitcoin standard and you're truly in a deflationary economy, then you're in a position where all those incentives get realigned. I mean, there's people talking about quantum computing, being able to break the SHA-256 algorithm. Um, there's ways, very easy ways to make, Bitcoin uh, quantum computing resistant. It's already quantum computing resistant to a certain degree.
Bitcoin's just categorized in another one of those cryptocurrencies, when in reality it's doing a lot better than all of them, pretty sure.
You can watch the global hash rate drop about 16, 17%. Like you can watch it.
Welcome back to the Orange Peel Podcast. And you know how everyone always says on this channel, fix the money, fix the world, and everyone with all their problems, they're continuously just saying Bitcoin fixes this? Well, today we're talking to a guy who is actually out there proving it. Not just on X, not just in theory, but really in the real world, in the energy fields of Texas. David Branscum has spent over 20 years in tech and energy, continuously building Bitcoin mining infrastructure, working on flare gas mitigation, biodigestion, geothermal, and basically every wild way to turn wasted energy into sound money. But here's what makes this episode even cooler. We're joined today by David's son, Dylan, who is a 19-year-old full-on Bitcoiner, and that is just so impressive. I mean, if you've been keeping up with this channel, you know that a lot of the Bitcoiners that we have on, they are much older than 19. So, I mean, this is just so cool. I'm so excited. This is going to be a conversation all about mining and energy, but also family and freedom, and how the next generation is continuously learning that money doesn't really have to come from Wall Street. It can come from anywhere. So with that being said, let's get right into it. David, Dylan, thank you guys so much for joining me on today. I am so excited to get to know you both.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So do you want to start us out by, sharing your Bitcoin journeys, maybe how you got into it?
First, you want me to go first? So, I guess I had done a lot of different tech jobs and things like that, even run a company of my own. And then I was working with a startup and just constantly trying to, get ahead of the fiat game. And it just every year it got harder and harder. I didn't know I was looking for Bitcoin, right, until I found it. Till I was really actually ready for it. But what's interesting is I have kind of a unique story. I didn't actually find it and purposely get a job or move into Bitcoin. I just, I kind of got lucky and got sucked in. I just thought I was getting another job. And with my neighbor across the street, I was working on something in the backyard in 2021. I had made a lot of terrible mistakes. I had lost a lot of money. I was broke. But I had just kind of, not to say given up, but just kind of needed to change something and do something. I hadn't really done anything constructive in a while. And so I went and bought a bunch of stuff at a hardware store and started building a raised grow bed in our backyard. We have a small koi pond. And so I was building that when my neighbor came over to ask me about it. We started talking about the engineering of it. It was a flood and drain system. I learned what a bell siphon was. I learned what the Venturi effect is. Pressure changing and using it as like a vacuum kind of thing. All this cool stuff that I just learned on YouTube and things like that. And he asked me if I knew anything about Bitcoin. I was like, I know a little. I think I have a little bit of it, but I didn't really know what it was. And he said, well, what do you know about immersion cooling? I'm like, I don't know nothing less about that than I do about Bitcoin. And so he was the CEO at the time of a company called Midas Immersion. He introduced me to the other founder, and I went to work for them doing business development. They had just closed a deal with the publicly traded miner Riot, 200 megawatts of immersion cooling. So I kind of got thrown in the deep end a little bit, trying to figure out, how Bitcoin mining works, how all that stuff works. And I really just thought I was going to work with data centers and stuff. But then as I did that, I realized these guys are not traditional data centers, right? These are cowboys that are out in West Texas finding, out in the patch doing, taking energy and that, is readily available, but not really a lot of people out there to use it. And it's not really a lot of, I don't know. They'll go to wherever they need to go, and they're buyers of last resort, right? So they'll take energy that no one else wants and use it, and then when when someone else needs it, they'll actually they'll turn off, right? They'll curtail, which is really interesting. So, and I had just gone through what we call it right after COVID in January or February of 2021, we call it Snowvid. That's when the ice storm hit Texas and knocked out a lot of the grid. And so I found out that these guys can plug in, mine Bitcoin, and they can buy energy for cheap whenever it's plentiful and not everybody needs it and the price is low. And then when the rest of the grid needs it for homes, businesses, and other things, they'll turn off, right? They'll curtail, and in some cases even get a credit back, right? Like sell that power back to the grid. And I was like, this is kind of amazing. And that's kind of what started my journey in Bitcoin. I had a falling out with that company and I left, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I don't have like another plan really, but I just knew I wanted to keep working with these guys. They were so much fun to work with, such a unique group of people. And they were putting millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment on, out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, what do these guys know that I don't? And so I just kept doing side projects, small projects, making a little commission here and there on a deal if I could get involved or help out. But right, not long after I went to Mining Disrupt and met I was on a panel and I met a couple of really nice guys from Miami that wanted to build a mine. And so I worked with them building a 16 megawatt facility. It was 8 megawatts of immersion, 8 megawatts of air. It was just a budget thing at the time. Air and immersion, air was a much cheaper option. So, but I'd never done anything like that. And those guys were nice enough to pay me to do the research, work with the engineers, and kind of build up the design and the budgets and sourcing and all that kind of stuff. And that was my first education in Bitcoin and in Bitcoin mining. And so I was very lucky to have that. And then it hasn't been, super stable and like stuff all the time to work on, but I just kind of keep doing that. I just keep finding good people to work with and try to bring the right kind of teams together and make deals happen. And I've been able to do that pretty well over the last I guess I've been doing that now about close to 3 years. And these just like kind of I'm sure you're discovering too, right? We're still kind of early. So early adopters of a new technology, especially ones that go all in, are very passionate, very dedicated people. And so they're very charismatic. And so you want to be around that. And I just realized, we kind of have a joke in Bitcoin. It's like, once you work in Bitcoin, you kind of become unemployable, right? Because you start to realize all the fake stuff that happens in work and jobs and stuff. So being able to work with a group that you enjoy and you like, and you're not really working for somebody, right? We're all kind of working together, which is interesting. So that's kind of where I got in. And then Dylan can talk about it a little bit, but in the last 4 years, I've just been on him and his brother all the time. When they get money, I'm like, hey, are you buying Bitcoin? Are you dollar cost averaging? Are you buying, and at first it was just a joke. What was it? You would, how would you say the word Bitcoin?
I don't think we need to say that.
Yes, you can. It's just, it would get, I would do it, but I'll do it wrong. But it's like, it was just Dad's silly job, right? And so everybody, like a lot of people that find Bitcoin, they talk about it all the time. They try to tell other people about it. And then you're just the annoying Bitcoin person. Well, that's what I was, right, at home. And, I'd say, well, they'd get some money and I'd say, you know what you need to do? And Dylan would go, yeah, Dad, I need to buy Bitcoin. It's just it's Dad's stupid thing. But he started, they both got Cash App because it was easy for, their mom and I to, send them cash that way. And, we could move money around. And so we would, when they get a little bit of money, I'd tell them it's like, hey, just, buy a little bit. And so really they've kind of been dollar cost averaging for the last 3 or 4 years. And the last few, I guess really like the last year or so, with the run up from like 60, he's really kind of seen some of his money, that his, I don't know if you want to say, your fiat value increase, your spending power increase, or you've seen the inflation, drop away, right? Whichever way you want to kind of go on that. But so now I think they're kind of both believers in it and too. And so we live pretty much full on the Bitcoin standard, right? Like 90% of our investment is now in Bitcoin in one way or the other. And I get paid, most of my stuff gets paid in Bitcoin. So I cash out every month to pay the bills we need to pay and then just leave everything else in it. And then when we earn other money, that goes into Bitcoin too, when we can, after we pay bills and stuff. So it's just, it's been fun. And, I've kind of been able to kind of push him into it. And now he's out there working with some guys that are out putting up hash rate. And it's been fun to, to have him at a couple of conferences and events and meet these people that I kind of work with and interact with them and stuff. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds like you guys have had quite the journey in Bitcoin. And it's so cool to see that there are more Bitcoin families out there because, like, when I say I completely understand the whole sentiment of like Bitcoin is Dad's thing, like every single dinner table conversation, my parents were just consistently talking about Bitcoin. And I'm 19 as well, and I have a younger brother who's 16. So my parents have been talking about Bitcoin with us since like 2022, maybe 2021. It's just been a consistent thing. But it wasn't really until this year that I was like, maybe Dad was right, which is a little bit hard to admit. I will say, just see your parents talking about something and then being like opposed to it and being like, well, you might be wrong, or like, I don't really care. And then realizing like, oh, they were right. I should have listened. But it's really cool to see how you were able to, talk to Dylan and able to get him orange pilled and with your other son as well. Dylan, what I want to ask you is, I mean, what really clicks about Bitcoin for you? Like what was kind of the thing that made you get into it?
I mean, just seeing my money go up, really. I wasn't really like super passionate about anything in high school that could like make me a lot of money. So honestly, just any way I can make money, be good. I think 2023 is when I first started buying into Bitcoin. It wasn't really I wasn't really putting that much money into it because my job at the time, I was working at the country club, right?
Yeah.
About a year ago, yeah. I worked at a country club. I wasn't really making that much, but like I put like $1, $5, $10, a little bit into Bitcoin because I saw it was going up. It was at like 106, 108 at that
Oh,
time.
back then?
Yeah.
No, it was 2023. It was like in the
I don't know when
50s and
I started
60s.
buying it.
Oh, 50s and 60s.
Oh yeah, I remember when it hit 80,000 actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was low. So I've seen my money increase a lot. Yeah,
We call that NGU, number go up technology.
Yeah.
That's how everybody gets excited with it at first. So I don't know if you'll naturally talk about it, but like we went to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. Yeah, in Nashville in 2024. There was and he was walking. It was fun because he watches a little bit of politics, right? He knows who Vivek is and JD Vance, and and they were all going to be there. Trump was there and stuff like that, right? So it was kind of it was a fun conference, especially that day where Trump spoke and things like that. But one of the most interesting things to me was someone noticed him walking around with an RFK, with an RFK Jr. hat, and a guy from the New York Post. I don't know if it ever actually got put in an article or anything, but he got interviewed by a guy from walking around from the Post, New York Post. And I was like, I know. And he said, he said, he's 17. Is it okay if I talk to him? I was like, yeah, go for it. And a lot of parents might have just stuck around, and I kind of wanted to, but I was like, let me give him some room and just walk away. Right. So I kind of moved away. I was just within earshot, but like he asked him a lot of hard questions, and he had some really good answers, which tells me that he's like, when I'm talking about inflation and the Federal Reserve and why our money's broken, he was actually paying attention to that. What that guy ask you? Do
I
you remember
remember you just asked me like my opinion on RFK Jr. And I was like, I like him a lot, but like an independent has never won the election since like Washington, I think, is the only independent. But yeah, I was like, I find a lot of like his policies and takes on things interesting.
But what did he asked you about why you were into Bitcoin? And what do you remember what you said?
I don't remember. I really don't.
I remember him saying he said, well, it's like it's I think you used the phrase a hedge against inflation, which is probably something I've either said.
I picked up a lot of lingo off.
That's right. Over the last few years, a lot of lingo. But he was saying like, well, yeah, it's a hedge against inflation. It's like the federal. He's like the Federal Reserve just they print money. And so our money becomes worth less and less every year. And he's like, you can't print more Bitcoin, right? There's only 21 million Bitcoin. And so it's like I was like, oh man, saying those things over and over and over again at home, it's actually kind of sticking a little bit, and he's learning it and hearing it. And he's not as, vocal about it or whatever as I am about it, because you're new to the money thing and earning money and all.
My closet isn't really filled with Bitcoin t-shirts.
No, that's sure not. They're not. I have a lot. Actually, I've got a whole drawer. So I've got 2 drawers, one for regular shirts and one for just Bitcoin shirts. But it was just nice to hear, the thing for me when I was working with those guys and started studying it, I didn't really learn a lot about Bitcoin itself. I just learned about how broken our the US dollar is, Australian currency, any fiat currency, right? It's built on anything that's Keynesian economics, right? It's just it's based on lies, right? It's all based on deception and lies and control. And so people ask me, I'd been working in Bitcoin maybe like 2 years, and people would ask me, how much do you know about Bitcoin, or can you talk to me about the technical side of it? And I was like, I really can't. Like, I can make a transaction on chain. I know how to DCA. I can go and I can look at the mempool, but I don't really know what I'm looking at. I know kind of how it works, but I don't really, I don't know a lot about Bitcoin. I just know how broken our system is. And so, being able to understand that, it just, I just realized one day my aha moment was, okay, there's 100% chance that my dollars next year will buy me less. They'll be worth less. If there's even a 1% chance that Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin, either goes up or saves my time and energy from inflation in the long, even if that's all it does, then I'd kind of be stupid to not go in, right? To go in all in on it. And you start to study that and you realize that's what rich people do, right? They use debt to buy assets that go up against the dollar. That's all they do. And so it's like the less cash they have, the better. And I remember not too long after I discovered that is when Michael Saylor was in an interview on television and on TV on some big money news show. And he said, people that they use currency as a store of value, we call them poor. You just like, you don't realize how profound that is. And it became a joke, people put it to music and all that stuff, but it really is true. And it's because the government wants them that way, right? The government wants you that way because you're easily controlled, and you'll give them more power, and you let go of your freedom and your sovereignty and stuff like that. So once you kind of start to click that direction, you make the changes all the way across the board. like, I'm not doing this anymore, or I'm going to live this way, or I'm going to do this. It's not Bitcoin that makes that change for you. Bitcoin's just a tool, right? But if Bitcoin or finding Christ or whatever it is that gets you starting to look for truth, then you start to look for truth in all the other areas of your life too. And so I want that for him and his younger brother. His mom and I have had to struggle, you know, um, with just all kinds of stuff. I remember our 10th anniversary. We're about to go to Hawaii, and we're already kind of strapped for cash. But I'm like, it's our 10th anniversary. My boss at the time, a guy I worked with, is like, "Hey, take my timeshare. You just got to get there." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. Let's do that." And then our hot water heater broke and leaked all in the day we were supposed to fly out. And I was like, "Oh man, what do I do?" It's like, I guess I just put it on the credit card and hope that I can pay that off in time. It's like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what exactly we're going to do, um, finding Bitcoin has kind of flipped the script on that, right? It's like, I'll go buy something now. Let's say, or my 15-year-old's braces. It was like, it's gonna cost 10,000. Well, not really, because I bought Bitcoin in the bear market of 2022. So that $10,000 was actually $1,600 of 2022 money. I mean, that it literally is doing what money is supposed to do, which is make your life a good store of value, a real hard asset, a hard money that is doing what it's supposed to do, makes your life cheaper over the long run. Everything gets less and less and less as technology improves and things get better. So that's what I want for them. And the fact that he's not, he gives me crap all the time about it, right? Because I'm always on him to, look at Bitcoin and all that stuff, learn more about it, and, even go work with these guys and stuff. But it's like, you have a unique opportunity, you as well, Nicki. It's like, you have a unique opportunity at your age to, do what you love, work hard at it, and then put your value, your time, and your energy, save it in Bitcoin, not even invest it, just save it. And in 5-10 years, you may be able to just say, okay, well, I've done well, and now I can do whatever I want, whatever I'm passionate about. The money's not an issue. It's not an obstacle anymore, right? And it has nothing to do with being, super wealthy or provide, or doing anything. It's just, it literally gives you your freedom back to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I think the best thing about getting to chat with all these Bitcoiners and getting to hear their stories is just being able to see how adopting a sound money, adopting a money that is, deflationary by design, has improved their overall quality of life. Not just how stressed they are about their money, not just about, their finances, but you see more people are getting active. More people are going into the gym. They're caring about what they eat, spending time outside, going out with their family and things like that. So this is something that I really like to connect back to Gen Z, because I do think that we as a generation have a huge problem with high time preference and doing things that will satisfy us in the now rather than thinking about our futures. So, for example, I have conversations with a lot of my friends about, saving and Bitcoin and investing. And majority of them don't even have savings funds. And if they do, there's maybe like 100 Australian dollars in there, which is somewhat around 75, 80 USD. So it's not really anything that can get you anywhere in an emergency. And it just goes to show that, every paycheck that they get in, they are immediately spending it out on something like clothes or coffee or, going out to eat. And, what I wanted to ask you guys is, maybe this is more so for Dylan, but when you are talking to some of your friends, are you tending to see the same problem with just, a lot of Gen Z just having a higher time preference than we should be, and nobody's really thinking about their futures?
I mean, like a bunch of my friends who are in college right now, they don't really have obviously a lot of savings because they're in college. Every dollar that they get is going to food or drinks or whatever. But yeah, I don't really talk about I don't know. I don't really talk about like finances a lot with my friends. I have like, because like my generation has a lot of like crypto bros. I'm sure you've heard of them. And so they're kind of like, I'm like, oh yeah, I own a lot of Bitcoin too. And they're like, oh no, the exchange rate is gonna go. You need to go to this and go to this. And I was like, I don't know, I'm making a profit right now. I don't really see a need to change it. And like, uh, one of my friends, he's always he's like heard about the stock market, but he's never like he's bought a few stocks here and there. He hasn't done anything with them. I'm like, I showed him how like Bitcoin's been like going up, and I was like, I mean, now's a pretty good time to invest because it's only gonna go up from here. I don't know how crazy he is about it, but yeah, I'm not afraid to like hide it or anything. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
really
no,
talk.
that's fair. I completely get, the whole crypto aspect of it. I think when I started the podcast and I shared it at first to my Instagram story, I got a bunch of DMs from my friends that were like, "Oh, are you trying to be a finance guru now?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm just, having these conversations because they're important ones to have." And, when we're in school, we're not really taught anything about financial literacy, let alone how broken our money is. They don't even tell us how to save up for a house, how to pay taxes, let alone teach us about inflation or the gold standard or, what happened in 1971. I mean, I guess really, for Gen Z, what is it about Bitcoin that makes it so special? What is it about Bitcoin that should draw more and more attention? And this is a question for both of you guys, because I know you might have some different perspectives on it.
Well, my generation is like, or our generation, I guess, is the first generation that can't afford like homes and forever. They can't afford a lot of things because of like salary hasn't kept up with inflation because the inflation rates have increased like crazy. Yeah, Bitcoin is just like a way out of it. I mean, it's becoming more profitable by the day to invest in it. And yeah, we're really just like, I mean, I know people in like their mid 20s that are still living at home just because they can't afford to move out. And I see them spending money, like you said, like a lot of like car parts, just like to soup up their car, or concert tickets. That's and like expensive coffee that you don't really need. Like I've learned since I've been working for the Bitcoin Mining Institute, I go up to a small Texas town in the middle of nowhere, 3 hours away for 5 days a week. So while I'm out there, I'm learning like I buy like the cheapest quality stuff that I could possibly get at like HEB or Walmart or whatever. And I do make sure that it's like decent quality, but like I'm spending like as little money as possible. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
he's always been a little bit better at that, honestly. Like, and Dylan's actually kind of always had a little bit of an old soul, right? Like he's not the kind of guy that's like his friends aren't gonna peer pressure him into doing something he doesn't want to do. And, when he was little, we used to go to, a donut shop or cupcake place, and all the other kids would pick out those, cupcakes, and he'd buy like pumpkin bread, right? Not because it was cheap. It's like, this is what I like, right? And it's one of those things too, where it's funny. I don't know if you know this about yourself specifically, but like, um, he's okay spending the money on something if it's the quality or it's the level that he wants, right? So he'll come if he wants something that he knows is not like that great or necessary. He'll come and he'll ask us. It's like, hey, can you guys get this for me? And I'm like, well, no, you're working, buddy. If you want that, you can get it yourself. And he's like, I don't need it that bad. I know
more.
he doesn't do that as much anymore, right? Because he's worried. But when he was 16, 17, we're like, well, you just got a couple $100 for your birthday from grandparents or something. If you want to go spend $80 on something or on that, go do it. And he's like, and it makes him think, so he's like, I don't really need it that bad, not enough to part with my money, right? So it's like he's kind of already got that built in, which is nice. But it's the same struggles, right, that you guys have, everybody has had. I don't want to, sound like a boomer and be like, well, you should be able, quit your avocado toast and you can, you can get you can buy a house, right? That's not really the case. But what's happening is the boomers, may pass on before, all of this kind of implodes and stuff, but everybody's feeling it, right? You guys are feeling it. Our Gen Xers are feeling it, right? And then the younger boomers are feeling it too. We're all getting priced out. Right? And then there's some other lies that we were told and sold and believe, we've been told for 60, 70 years, since 1971, pretty much, right? Like, you have to live, you can't live with your parents, you're supposed to, if you're successful, you're going to move out, you're going to get married soon, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. It's like, or you got to go to college, you got to do all these things, right? All of those things just cost extra money, and it's not always necessary, right? Like, so with him, we're like, listen, yes, you can move out whenever you're ready, but you always have a home with us. And the longer he stays and works, the more money he can put into Bitcoin, the less he's going to have to work on the tail end. So I'm like, look, you're 19. You might be in a position here early enough in Bitcoin and working in Bitcoin where we're still such a young industry. You could retire at 30. Here I am, 47. I'm still not ready to retire. I'm not financially in a place where I can just say I'm done, right? And then go do 100% of what I want to do. So it's a really unique opportunity. But everybody's had that. We've all had that problem, I think, with time preference, which I think is what you hit on, right? We all have that I want this now kind of thing. And the problem is when you use debt to get the things that don't appreciate in value, and then successful and rich people understand that game, and they're fine taking out debt as long as they understand it and they use it to their advantage, and they're buying things like assets, hard assets, whatever. And then when you compare it to the stock market and things like that, you really go down that rabbit hole. You're like, man, the stock market only goes up as fast as inflation does. So what that tells me is there's no company out there that's really providing a service that is so valuable. It justifies them making more money. They're literally just being propped up by, this system and stuff like that. So we're all facing it. We're all feeling the crunch, right? What I like about something like Bitcoin and what you're doing is it allows people of, any age, any walk of life to kind of actually have a real conversation about finances, in a way that I think that was also one of the lies we were told too. It's like, oh, you can't talk about it. My parents never talked to me about it, but then I see all the mistakes they made, and then I end up repeating some of those mistakes and, making some really bad decisions too. It's like, you need to talk about it. You need to understand how this system works. My younger son has taken like a financial literacy class in school.
Same one I took.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, but they didn't really teach him. You didn't talk about like the Federal Reserve. You didn't talk about.
Oh, we did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Did you talk about debt and inflation?
Yeah. I mean, the book, finance is changing all the time. But yeah, we talked. I don't know if you know who Dave Ramsey is. He's like
Oh yeah.
yeah. That's we were using kind of his course. He kind of views himself as kind of a finance god, which he's not really. I do remember learning about like the Federal Reserve and taking off the gold standard in 71, the first credit cards, all that type of thing. Learned like investing a little bit. I remember we weren't really told what to invest in, but that investing was a good idea. And like you have a $600 emergency fund for anything, and which really you probably should have 1,000 or more in your emergency fund now. But yeah, I do remember it was only a semester. I forgot. I was like, it was speech the first semester and then finance second semester. It was helpful because like originally you didn't really get taught anything. You had like a solid like base of what to go off of. So it was helpful. It wasn't like the smartest thing, but like it was still helpful. Yeah.
Nicki, you mentioned that earlier, the emergency fund, right? It's like, I remember reading an article just a year or two ago that says like 80% of Americans couldn't come up with $1,000 for an emergency if they needed it.
Wow.
Like 80% of Americans. I'm like, how is that even possible? I mean, even having access to like a credit card with a few $1,000s of credit, in case you needed it. It's like, how do you not have that? And so you're starting to see those. It's not just you guys, right? It's like it's across the board. People are just they can't keep up, and all they're trying to do is just maintain the same lifestyle, right? Like when these guys were younger, and I would do taxes at the end of the year, and I'd look at finances and stuff. I would look at it and say, okay, I was told I needed a 6-month cushion, in cash. Well, last year that was this. This year it's this. Like I haven't changed my bills, I haven't added anything, but my life is more expensive. And it happens for a few years when you're younger and you just think that's just how life goes. It's just supposed to happen. You're busy, raising a family, you're living your life, you're trying to work and provide for your family. But then eventually it catches up with everybody. You just wake up one day and you're like, why is my life costing me twice as much? And I've worked my tail off. I've done a good job and I'm only about 20% higher than where I was, right? You're losing. It's happening to everybody.
It really is. And something that I learned about here in college, I've taken a few, finance and economics courses just as like a breath track. But something that we talk about is just the fact that we live in a debt-based economy. And because of that, our economy is also K-shaped. You have the rich are continuously getting richer because they're able to, buy up more houses. They're able to invest. They have more knowledge of the stock market, and they're closer to the money printer. I mean, I recently found out, and I've brought this up like at least 10 times on this channel now, but I recently found out that Nancy Pelosi is regarded as the best investor of all time, which is just absolutely insane to think about, right? Like she was Speaker of the House. Absolutely nothing to do with Wall Street or investing. But it just goes to show really how corrupt our system is. And, it's a K-shaped economy. So the poor continue to get poorer. They can't put, money into houses. They can't put money into their Roth or in the S&P 500. So it really is insane. And this is what I love about hearing stories like yours. It shows that Bitcoin really is for everyone. And Bitcoin really it's more than just a money. It's more than just, the protocol and the text aspect of it. It's true transformation. I mean, it sounds like it's really, go ahead.
No, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, I know he's not for sure, right? But it seems like the younger you are, the more you struggle, the more the easier it is to lean in to like the idea of kind of socialism and things like that, because you're like, well, if I can't pay for it, the government can pay for it kind of thing. And so a lot of younger kids will move that direction because they're struggling so hard, because they see their parents struggling so hard. But what's amazing about Bitcoin is, like you said, it's for everyone. It realigns it's not about equity, that kind of BS word, right? It's not saying it's like, well, everybody gets their fair share. Everybody gets their fair share based on the value they provide, right? And so that doesn't mean people should suffer or be stolen from or treated unfairly, right? But it does. But what's really interesting about this from a kind of a macro perspective, eventually you will get to a point where people won't accept cash. They won't accept money. They won't accept dollars. They won't accept any currency other than Bitcoin. And at that point, at that point, all of those incentives, like what Nancy Pelosi was doing, being close. And I mean, the only reason you just talked through that, right? The only reason she was able to do that is because she knew legislation was happening. She talked to her husband. She made her husband invest in, the direction he needed to go.
Microsoft's a really big one. Right before the U.S. military made Microsoft the official computer system, she put in a ton of money into it.
It's just, and it's weird when you think about it. you look at it and you're like, man, it's so unfair. It's so wrong. Well, it's actually her. She's done the work and put in the time to be closer to the printer so she can play the game better than us, right? She's incentivized to cheat that way, to make bad decisions, right? When you're on a Bitcoin standard and you're truly in a deflationary economy, then you're in a position where all those incentives get realigned, right? Like you don't have to make that bad decision because the Bitcoin I have this year will buy me more stuff next year, the way that it's supposed to be, right? The way that, okay, we made an improvement in cars and the way that we build cars and it's cheaper now. Why does the car cost more? Well, it costs more because we're on a debt base. If we were on Bitcoin, the cost of that car would literally go down in sats. Like it may be 1,000,000 sats today. It would be, 500,000 sats in a year or 200,000 sats or what, that's what happens, right? Once that happens, the people like Nancy Pelosi, they don't have to cheat, right? They can just literally they can just do good things with their money, knowing that I don't have to lie, cheat, and steal to get ahead of this system. I don't have to, destroy other people's lives to get closer to the money printer, that's what I'm excited about.
And that really is something I wish more Gen Z knew, because I think we are seeing a rise in socialism amongst our generation. It's widespread. I mean, I'm sitting here in Australia, and I can tell you it's probably just as
Australia's
bad
bad.
here.
Yeah, Australia.
Australia is bad when it comes to this regard. But we always see a rise in socialism when we see a rise in financial nihilism, when we see the younger generations are becoming more and more nihilistic about the possibility of owning a home, of getting fair pay, of getting married and having kids, if that's something that they choose to do, which is, I think that obviously I don't think that socialism is the answer, but I kind of understand the sentiment, which is, why when we talk about people like Nancy Pelosi and we talk about how really it serves you and it benefits you, the closer you are to the money printer and, the richer you are, the better off you're going to be. It's interesting to see how these are also the people that are going to be opposed to Bitcoin, right? Because what's the core thesis of Bitcoin? It's that it's a completely decentralized digital currency. There's
Too.
and it's transparent, which it's incredible. I mean, you don't have any human involvement within the actual protocol itself, and everything that you want to know about Bitcoin, you can go on the internet and you can learn, which is why I would think that Bitcoin is something that should resonate with Gen Z, just because we're such a digital generation. I mean, I don't know about you, Dylan, but I basically grew up on the internet. I got my first phone at like the age of 11, and I was on social media by 12. I really can't remember a life without it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like, don't you think that the digital aspect of Bitcoin should be something that has a rising positive sentiment amongst Gen Z?
When did you get your first phone, Dylan?
My first phone in 8th grade, the summer, or I guess the summer before freshman year, because I was going on a church trip to Colorado, and my parents wanted me to be able to text back and forth.
We fought him on a phone for a long time. We wouldn't let him. All his friends had phones. We wouldn't let him have.
I had a really crappy phone that didn't have a SIM card, so it's basically just like an iPad that was condensed. It was so bad, like within I think 2 years, the screen literally fell off of it.
Gosh.
It was really bad. Yeah, I got what was it? It was a Motorola.
Oh, man, you got your first like legit phone or
My-
whatever.
my-
We were an Android, and all his friends had iPhones, so that was another one that he didn't like. Right?
I got my first iPhone, I think last Christmas.
Yeah, senior year.
But yeah, it does make sense that like we're such a digital world and cryptocurrency. But I think it's got a bad rap because of like crypto bros. Yeah, I think it's just got like Bitcoin's just categorized in another one of those cryptocurrencies. When in reality, it's doing a lot better than all of them, pretty sure. And yeah.
Now, I mean, it's weird. You guys are and you're not digital at the same time, right? So it's like I grew up. I remember the first, PC, personal computer, right, that I ever saw. I remember the first. I didn't. We didn't have a computer lab till I was I think freshman or sophomore in high school, and there was no real internet, really, right? Like I learned typing on a typewriter. That makes me sound so old. But like
I didn't know that.
I did in like sixth or seventh grade or something. I took typing, and it was just to learn the, whatever. But it's like we had that new technology came out, so we had to learn it. And I'm still at a point where I'm like, man, it's like all the information you could ever want for anything is out there to go get. I mean, you could probably, study law with Chat GPT or some other AI, and probably, study for the bar exam and pass the bar exam, at your local state if you wanted to be an attorney, right? Like all of that's out there. You could figure out how to do it. But because you guys grew up with all of that at your fingertips, it's not that you're taking it for granted, right? You're just like, I can get whatever I want when I want it. So now there's a little bit of apathy. It's like, well, I don't have to work for it. I don't have to go find it, kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting, right? It's like, but so I think the big thing for you guys is to just, it's like, how do we actually take that information, all of that? It's almost overwhelming, and actually use it in a positive way to make our lives better. That's the challenge, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very nuanced subject, and I think I'm able to see, both aspects of that conversation. But before we start to wrap things up, I do want to ask you guys about your work in mining and what, Dylan, you're doing over with, the Bitcoin Mining Institute. So I think in recent months, we've been seeing a lot of stuff on X about how Texas has become this epicenter for Bitcoin mining. So I mean, what makes it so special? I mean, could you guys share what's going on in kind of the scene over there?
You know more than I do.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of energy and energy production in Texas, especially when you compare it to, the population. So per capita.
We have our own power grid.
We have our own power grid, right? There's an East and West and a Texas power grid, ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, right? So it's made up of a group of energy professionals, a board that kind of helps to manage it. That's good and bad, right? But there's just an awful lot here, and I think the reason, Texas is known. It does have, especially we're in Austin, right? So that area is a very tech focused area. Dell Computers is here in Round Rock and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of tech here, but the reason why Bitcoin mining is so big in Texas is after the alleged, was it 2021 ban, China mining ban, where they said they were going to officially ban it. They've still kept, mining, and the people that were connected at the government level, I'm sure, still got to do that. But a lot of those guys left and came over to Texas just because of how open, it was to do business in the U.S. at that time, and how much energy we have here. Texas also has a really just kind of good culture of encouraging business and open business, right? If you can put the money together and you're not, doing a lot of damage to people around you, it's like this is come do business, right? Come, that kind of thing. It's kind of open. Texas is kind of open for business. So all of that kind of came together, and the timing worked out well on that. I feel pretty lucky we were already here in this, part of Texas specifically, and it being the capital. So there's some political side of that as well. Texas is very friendly. It's been very friendly, not just to Bitcoin, but, any kind of crypto. But because of the energy side of it, and because Bitcoin is a proof of work, the better, there might be some cheaper energy around the planet in other places, but like the safety that you get from being in the United States, and then the the openness to do business and the respect for business in Texas kind of makes it a even more unique place. So it was just kind of a natural thing, and it's grown a lot faster, I think, than anybody would have expected. It's estimated there's about 16 or 17% of the entire global hash rate is all in Texas, not just the US and North America, but like just Texas, which is kind of crazy to think about. On a hot day in Texas, when the grid is pushed because people need that power for air conditioning and things like that, and ERCOT sends out a message and says, hey, it's called demand response. You have to, if you don't turn off, we're going to charge you, this much for your power. It's going to be a lot more expensive. Um, you know, Texas turns off because they don't want to pay that power. And then what they don't want to pay for that, that high rate. So they turn off, and you can literally watch the what is it? You can watch the global hash rate drop about 16, 17%. Like you can watch it on there's a few different people track it, like Luxor and other companies and things that track it, but like it just it's kind of amazing to see it drop like that. We have a talkative cat that just came inside because it's raining outside, so
No, he's
okay. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that is really, really cool to hear. I mean, I've tried to follow a little bit, but Bitcoin mining and the energy perspective of it, it's so interesting to me, but it's such a foreign field to understand. So this is it was a really great conversation. And I'm looking forward to going back and researching some of these things.
Sure.
Last question. I just want to, ask you guys, what do you think the next generation of mining is going to look like? Because we're seeing so much increase in things like automation and AI integration. And so do you guys have any thoughts, any visions for, where you expect the next like 5 to 10 years to go?
What do you think, Bob?
I mean, my generation definitely knows how to use AI. Like, I remember the first time I used AI was to write a finals paper in high school, and in English, yeah. And I don't think I wrote a single original essay my senior year. But
Confession time.
yeah, I don't care. I'm graduating.
You are. He's graduated. He's done.
I know a lot of people in college use AI. They're very open about it. There's always a new AI that can do this, and they can organize your textbook and make questions for you. So we definitely know how to use AI, and I think it's just a matter of who decides they want to be into Bitcoin, and then they'll use AI.
Yeah. There's some guys that are already playing with trying to. So I mean, when you mine Bitcoin, this is kind of in the weeds a little bit, right? But basically, all you're doing is you're trying to guess a number, and you're trying to guess a number. It's called a nonce. It's a number that will only be used once, right? Which is kind of crazy to think about from a mathematics perspective, right? But so there are some people that are trying to use AI to guess that number a little faster. Kind of interesting. Some things going on there. The good news is, I mean, there's people talking about quantum computing, being able to break the SHA-256 algorithm. There's very easy ways to make, Bitcoin, quantum computing resistant. It's already quantum computing resistant to a certain degree. Like the odds, what people don't understand is even if you have the technology that people are speculating about right now, haven't even been able to make, the odds of it and the amount of time it would take for it to break one, Bitcoin wallet, is kind of astronomical. And then if you made one change that to Bitcoin that the entire consensus, decided, yes, we're going to do this because we want our money to stay, our value to stay secure, then it just starts that loop all over again, right? And this is how kind of where math is such an amazing piece of Bitcoin. So math and physics together to store your energy and your time is that's kind of what Bitcoin is. And so as long as you have that energy, right? And Bitcoin's also very interesting, kind of capitalistic supply and demand system that it just balances itself out, because that's how math and science works, right? So as things grow, as things shrink, as our values change, Bitcoin's just going to adapt and be whatever, but it itself doesn't really change. You know what I mean? So from that aspect, AI is going to do some really cool stuff, really amazing things. I don't really think it's going to affect our money. I think that just like the internet is the internet, and um, the way that we send data on the internet is a protocol. The way that we read and put, the way that we're talking right now through this, website service, right, is a protocol. Um, Bitcoin is a protocol of money. I don't think it's going to be broken or chain anytime, or be broken anytime soon. That's kind of the good. That's kind of the good news on that from that aspect. Will AI do some cool stuff? Sure, it will. It'll fight Bitcoin for energy. It'll do some other stuff like that. But ultimately, whatever we value the most is going to win out.
Yeah, I think that's a really great note to kind of wrap things up on. AI, I view AI and Bitcoin as kind of two sides of the same coin, right? I think while AI is going to drive a lot of innovation, a lot of entrepreneurship in Gen Z's future specifically, you need to have Bitcoin because you need to have a money that's going to continue to work for you as you work to provide value to society. Why would you, as Jack Mallers says, why would you want to work for something that people in government can just print? So I do think that, we're in for a really hopeful future for Gen Z if, we just look at it with the correct lens. And with that, thank you guys so much for coming on. I mean, this was a really, really great conversation. It was more than a conversation. It's really nice to hear stories about, legacy and learning and about the energy that drives this really awesome technology that we have. So, last question, and I like to ask this one to everyone that comes on my channel. And it's just, if you could recommend one like Bitcoin resource, this could be a podcast or a book, anything that you wanted, that someone who started to learn about Bitcoin today should, begin with, what would that be?
I think, Bill.
You? Uh,
We can go for two different ones.
I don't know. I don't really like.
He's had
Oh,
me yelling at him for so long. He doesn't really have to read a lot.
yeah. I haven't like read a lot or like watched a lot of people who are into crypto like that. I've just been listening to my dad and just following him around at conferences and picking things up. Yeah, I really don't know.
That's okay. I got the first What is Money podcast episodes with Robert Breedlove, where he talks to Sailor. That was kind of my big one. I think it's like the first 10 or 11, maybe even 12 episodes. It was a lot. And Sailor talks about a lot, so it could get boring at times, but um, that was where I learned about, how broken our system was. And that was it. Only after understanding how broken the system was did I start to understand why Bitcoin's better. Um, he's a bit of a history guy. Like, we haven't really talked about a whole lot, but he knows, especially American history, surprisingly well, and or NFL statistics. Very good at that too. He's good at that too. But I read The Creature from Jekyll Island, which talks about the creation of the Federal Reserve on Jekyll Island. And looking back on it, it was very interesting, because in 2020, I was working for a company that was doing some stuff with some elections. I had drinks at a happy hour with the executive team from Dominion Voting uh, on Jekyll Island. And only years after, when I read that book, did I kind of realize how interesting that was, that I had that experience all the way across the board between, control and all of that kind of stuff or whatever. So that's a really good book. And then there's a lot, right? The Bitcoin Standard is kind of the go-to. That's kind of a harder one to read. I read that first, and I'm not an economist, so I had to stop and Google some things. But there's a really good one called by Brian DeMint, called Bitcoin Evangelism, where he comes at it from a Christian perspective, which is really good, and it's written really well for someone completely brand new. And it's a short read. It's really easy. So those are probably the ones I would say. And then if you like the movie The Big Print, or The Big Short, you could read Larry Lepard's book, The Big Print. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He's great. So
Yeah, awesome. I will add links to all of those resources. We've had people recommend the Sailor series on here, but I'm looking forward to looking into that Jekyll Island book. I think that's going to be a really great read. So thanks again, guys, for coming on, and for everyone who's listening, go check out David and Dylan's work over on X. And with that, is there some place that people can reach you guys if they have questions, they want to get in touch?
I mean, X is good. You could actually just I have an email that I'm fine putting out there to just about anybody. It's just david@hydropod.io. If you want to contact me for, any kind of consulting or business reasons. I'm essentially an energy and Bitcoin mining consultant kind of thing. So if there's a problem you have or you need to connect with somebody, but X is probably where I'm most active, and Dylan's over there too now. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Awesome. Well, I will add links to those in the description. And everyone listening, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode, because I definitely did. I mean, this has been such an awesome conversation. And I love, getting to talk to other Gen Z in this space and seeing how they were introduced to Bitcoin. So with that being said, everyone, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay orange pilled. I'm your host, Nicki, and I'm going to see you next time.